Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and what I want to talk about today is the very real prospect for a general election being called quite soon. But there's four different scenarios that could lead to it. Now, before I go through that, just a little note for patrons. If you check out Patreon later today, I'm going to do some expanded thoughts on this, some of which may crystallise themselves for one of tomorrow's video, depending on how events pan out, because it's moving quite quickly, this. So, basically, it's quite hard to say where events are going to be leading to in terms of a Brexit conclusion. But one thing that is definitely becoming almost certain now is a general election this year. So let me summarise the events of the past day and try and explain. Now, after the vote for Parliament to take control of the Brexit process from the Prime Minister, a lot of Leave supporting MPs are now in a state of alarm. This is not a good thing for the Remain side, by the way. They still have the Prime Minister who, despite knowing that leaving is bad for the country, is essentially on their side. Indeed, the Prime Minister said that she might not even respect the result of the vote last night. But Brexiteers know that if Parliament does take control and determines a positive path to take through the process, it will not be a harder Brexit than is on offer by the Prime Minister. It will definitely be a softer one because most of Parliament isn't even in favour of leaving in the first place. So this could actually drag some support back to the Prime Minister's withdrawal agreements, and it looks like it has. 3 ministers resigned last night in order to defeat their own government on this issue. A business minister, Richard Harrington, in a resignation letter said it was because business owners in his constituency had informed him that investment had been cancelled as a result of the fear of a no-deal Brexit. He's therefore acted in the best interest of his constituents and helped out Parliament on a path to resolving the issue. And this is a point worth considering very carefully. For all the Brexit arguments that keep saying, oh, you don't actually know what's going to happen. I mean, first of all, to take the country on a path where you don't even know where you're going is both reckless and stupid. But actually, we do know. We didn't have to wait until we left the EU. Businesses have already started suffering just because of that result. And with a no deal becoming more likely, something that wasn't even considered possible 6 months ago, the cancellation of investment in this country has picked up pace. We've already had a taste of the economic disaster of a no-deal Brexit, and we haven't even committed ourselves yet. But there are still many people who won't accept it because, well, they don't exactly research business news or economic data, and if they still have their job, then they can be completely oblivious to the national situation. Not helped, of course, by the government fiddling the employment figures to suggest that unemployment is actually below zero. No one seems to be pointing too many fingers at this. In the papers today, the Brexit pushing sections of the media were still at it, with the Daily Express carrying on its narrative of Parliament stealing Brexit. The Sun kept on its weekend lines of the Prime Minister agreeing to step down if MPs back her deal. Now, when these paper reports on things like that, it's worth taking note because they do have inside information. And in this case, it seems to be accurate. Today, Theresa May announced that she would be addressing the 1922 committee tomorrow evening. That's basically the parliamentary Conservative Party, basically all the Tory MPs. And it can only mean she's going to say something about her departure as Prime Minister. It might not be immediate. She might just be laying out the conditions as she did last December, but it has got to be a momentous, speech, really. But we can look at that tomorrow after she's done it. The Daily Mail decided to focus on the notion of another general election. Now, without knowing precisely what they wrote, because I don't want to corrupt my eyes, this at least might be a realistic headline for once. And just as with The Sun, the Daily Mail is a Tory paper. They have more recently reported that the Cabinet have been told to prepare for a snap election as well. Now, if true, then the government may be of the same opinion as me in terms of outcomes of various scenarios. But in many ways, it doesn't really matter how Brexit turns out when it comes to the authority of the government. With or without Theresa May at the helm, the current government has failed. It doesn't have the numbers to guarantee getting its primary legislation through the House, and Conservative MPs are now routinely voting against their own government on important issues as well. This even includes ministers, not all of whom are even resigning or being sacked. Now, why would that change with anyone else? So in a situation like this, the government can't govern. So what are the likely scenarios that could lead to a snap general election? 1. The ERG, running scared about the possibility of a no deal with the EU, or indeed no Brexit at all, agreed to support Jeremy Corbyn in a vote of no confidence in order to plunge Parliament into chaos and have us drop out the EU without a deal. They've already threatened to do this, and not behind closed doors either, but in a Commons debate in full view of the public on the television. Saw it myself. Now, it wouldn't necessarily work because the EU has said it would allow more time for a general election. However, we would have to take part in those European elections. And it may be that the ERG would hope in that scenario to block it. Without that commitment, the EU wouldn't grant the extension and they get their no deal. At the moment, of course, with the head of the ERG saying that he's prepared to back May's deal if she resigns, they're not threatening it at the moment. Second scenario, the Prime Minister engineers a hard Brexit by ignoring Parliament's wishes. With so little time for Parliament to act, this is entirely possible. Remember, if we do not agree to European elections, we are leaving on April the 12th at the latest, potentially still this Friday. In this scenario, the independent group may find itself with new members as MPs from both Labour, but especially the Conservatives abandon their party. It would also mean that Theresa May, or whoever's in charge, no longer has a majority in Parliament, even with the DUP that she bribed with £1 billion of public money. Now, in this scenario, the vote of no confidence would pass, and without any Conservative MPs having to vote for it. And this is the rock and the hard place that whoever leads the Conservative Party would be trapped between. In the next 2 weeks, we are likely headed for either a hard Brexit or a soft or no Brexit. One way means a significant number of moderates in her party potentially quitting. The other way leads to the ERG threatening to hit the nuclear button. Both ways would, of course, cause a general election. 3, there's a third option, and that is Theresa May's deal is passed. So Jacob Rees-Mogg has been suggesting that he could vote for the deal and then shape it afterwards. But this would be to intend to renege on the country's obligations over the backstop at least, and possibly other aspects as well. Now, agreeing to a deal in bad faith is a surefire way for the UK to completely lose what little credibility we've got left. But he doesn't care about that, of course. He's kind of already lost plenty of it. And it also means that he gets to change his mind about the way he wants to vote on something, but he still insists it's undemocratic if people do the same. In terms of his plan to vote through a legally binding international treaty in bad faith, however, I think I'd have to cover that separately. So, there's a slight possibility that May's deal would pass, but let's look at the numbers for that. So, of the 650 seats in the House of Commons, 641 of them are occupied by MPs who can vote on matters in Parliament. There's 7 Sinn Féin MPs who don't take their seats because they can't swear allegiance. There's the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker who don't vote. Now, actually, at the moment, there's another seat that's vacant as well, so technically that means 640. But either way, however you look at it, it means that the Conservatives need 321 votes to guarantee a majority. That is assuming no one abstains. That's just scraping through. She has 314. Now, with the DUP, she has just enough votes to get budgets and votes of confidence passed, but they won't vote for her deal. So that means she is 7 short. Now, during the last vote on her deal, 3 Labour MPs and 4 independents voted in favour of it. That would leave her with 321 to 320, just enough to get her deal through without the DUP. But the DUP would be furious, and they've already indicated they could bring May's government down if that happened. The same Labour MPs who would vote her deal through would not vote for her government. It's Brexit they want, not a Tory government. So Jeremy Corbyn would trigger a vote of no confidence, and this would win as the DUP would support him. Ironically enough, for mortal enemies. And 4, there is a fourth scenario, and that's that the government simply decide that it's impossible to take any course of action that will not break their party and determine that their best chance is to get a majority back in a general election. This may follow a successful or unsuccessful vote on May's deal. After all, even with May's deal agreed upon, they know they have no chance of getting anywhere with the negotiations to come after. So, am I saying that a general election this year is inevitable? Not necessarily, but I do think it's extremely likely no matter what happens. I mean, 1, in the case of a soft Brexit or no Brexit emerging, I'm assuming that the ERG would carry out its threats to bring down the government. But that would only work if it could block us holding European elections. If they couldn't do that, then there'd be no point served in assassinating their own party. 2, in the case of a hard Brexit, I'm assuming more Conservative MPs would leave the party and join the independent group. The thing is, with that group, it's not yet in a position to be able to fight for seats in a general election, so it may not suit their interest to do that. That being said, they might be compelled to support a vote of no confidence to maintain their credibility. In addition, it's also possible that MPs wouldn't actually leave the party in those scenarios, even though they would not be very happy with their leadership. 3, in the case of the deal being accepted, I'm assuming the DUP would actively vote against the government. Now, they've indicated that they will, but that means supporting their archenemy, Jeremy Corbyn. If they just abstained, then the government might still win, depending on the votes of independents. And 4, for the government to willingly trigger a general election, I'm assuming that they'd have to be confident of improving their numbers. They do not want to let Labour fill Downing Street. You know, the idea of Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister, let me tell you, fills them with abject horror. They do not like the idea of Labour getting in at any time, but Jeremy Corbyn, for them, is the devil. It's pretty much the only thing that endears him to me, I have to say. But there you go. So I think there's an excellent chance that we will be voting in a general election for the 3rd time in 5 years, basically, very soon. And the events that lead to it are most likely to be triggered sometime in April. So what do I think is most likely? I still don't believe that Theresa May's deal will pass, I have to say. Even if Jacob Rees-Mogg votes for it, and I already talked about the raging hypocrisy of that, there are still others saying that they won't vote for it. Now, a single Tory voting against it, in theory, it's sunk. It is possible that maybe some more Labour MPs would rebel and vote for it to ensure Brexit happens. There are more than 3 Brexit supporting Labour MPs after all. But there are also quite a few Conservative MPs that have publicly said very recently that they're dead set against the deal. So I don't think that would make the difference. But if it did, there's a good chance that an immediate vote of no confidence would be issued, which would realistically take place, I guess, next Tuesday, April the 2nd. That means a general election being called 2 weeks later, because Parliament gets 2 weeks to find another government, but on April the 16th. Now, that's after the date of the Article 50 extension agreed with the EU. But would we have a new longer extension then or not? Who can say? Although the vote to defeat the government yesterday was not as comfortable as I would like, and the Beckett motion was defeated, that concerned me. I was given just enough optimism to believe that Parliament wouldn't sit back and allow the Conservatives to take us out without a deal. So I'd ordinarily think that that's the most likely outcome, that we go for a softer or no Brexit and the ERG triggers their nuclear button. But the Prime Minister does have executive powers that could frustrate the will of Parliament. She's already been found to be in contempt of Parliament once and still proceeded to defy them. Like I said, she's already said she may not even respect the result of the vote yesterday and carry on with her own plan, whatever that is. So for me, it's a toss-up between the 2 types of Conservative Party split, which would ensue once we choose a direction on Brexit, and we've got to do that in the next 10 days. And if there is a general election, one thing that would definitely help Jeremy Corbyn and Labour is that the Conservatives would have to be fighting a leadership contest and a general election, and that leadership contest will be very divisive this time round. They rallied around Theresa May last time. She was the compromise candidate. I don't really see another compromise candidate. The infighting could actually hurt them very badly, but we can come back to that as a prospect if a general election is triggered. For now, we'll just have to wait and see. So I hope you found that video interesting. There's exciting times coming. There'll be another interesting one tomorrow, I'm sure, as well. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification as well, please. And until next time, I'll see you later.